Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. I should have known something was different the moment Marcus Thorne walked into that penthouse boardroom, carrying himself like he owned not just the building, but every breath of air inside it. 15 years ago, I was Billie Hayes, financial analyst extraordinaire with a corner office on Wall Street and a reputation that could make or break billion-dollar deals. Today, I was just another invisible woman in a black uniform, carrying a silver tray of sparkling water to men who wouldn't notice if I vanished into thin air. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was serving the very type of people who had destroyed my life. But rent doesn't pay itself. And my daughter's college tuition certainly doesn't either. The Monarch Hotel's penthouse conference room gleamed with understated luxury. Marcus Thorne, CEO of Omnicorp, had reserved this space for what he called a green initiative presentation to international investors. The kind of feel-good environmental project that made wealthy people sleep better at night while their portfolios grew fatter. I moved silently around the table, placing crystal glasses with the practiced efficiency of someone who had learned to become invisible. After what happened to me 15 years ago, invisibility had become my superpower and my curse. Being unseen meant being safe, but it also meant watching the world continue to spin while I remained frozen in place. Marcus commanded attention through both authority and fear. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, he moved like a shark in familiar waters. As I refilled his glass, I caught fragments of his conversation with his lawyer about their upcoming deal. The phrase that stopped my blood cold was delivered so casually that anyone else would have missed its significance. Adaptive force majeure. Marcus said it like he was ordering lunch, but I knew exactly what those 3 words meant in environmental contracts. It was a legal loophole disguised as a safety clause, a way for companies to unilaterally change contract terms if market conditions shifted. In practice, it was a get-out-of-jail-free card for environmental regulations. My hands began to shake as memories crashed over me. 15 years ago, I had tried to expose a similar scheme at Meridian Financial. I thought I was being responsible, protecting both my firm and the public. Instead, I found myself framed for the very corruption I was trying to expose. My reputation was destroyed overnight. My career vaporized. My life turned upside down by people who wielded power like a weapon. Standing there in that opulent boardroom, listening to Marcus discuss what I recognized as massive fraud, something inside me snapped, not broke, but snapped into place, like a dislocated bone finally being set correctly after years of aching. I set the pitcher down with deliberate care and looked directly into his eyes. For the first time in 15 years, I let my voice carry the authority it had once possessed. "Excuse me, Mr. Thorne, that adaptive force majeure clause you just mentioned. It's not a safety measure. It's a license to commit fraud." The room went dead silent. Marcus's expression shifted from surprise to something much darker. "Who authorized hotel staff to speak during private business meetings?" he said coldly. "Security. Please escort this woman out immediately." But before security could move, Eleanor Vance appeared. As the Monarch's general manager, Eleanor carried herself with dignity that commanded respect, even from men like Marcus. Her intervention wasn't just professional courtesy. There was something personal in the way her eyes locked onto his. The moment Eleanor's office door closed behind us, her professional mask dropped completely. "You just gave me something I've been waiting 20 years for," she said quietly. "A weapon to use against Marcus Thorne." Eleanor revealed that her father had been Marcus's business partner decades ago. A brilliant engineer who developed technologies that formed Omnicorp's foundation. Marcus had systematically pushed him out, stolen his patents, and left him to die in poverty. Eleanor had positioned herself for eventual revenge. She offered me access to the monarch's secure servers. Knowing wealthy guests used the hotel's business center for confidential communications. For the first time in 15 years, I felt the familiar thrill of financial investigation coursing through my veins. That night, I returned to my modest apartment with renewed purpose. But the empowerment lasted exactly until I opened my front door the next morning and found chaos. My apartment had been ransacked. The intruders hadn't taken anything valuable, but they had taken my laptop and left something far more disturbing. A dead mouse on my kitchen table. The message was clear and terrifying. They knew where I lived. They knew I was a threat. For a moment, the old fear threatened to paralyze me, but this time was different. This time, I wasn't alone. I thought of Frank Miller, the investigative journalist who had tried to help me 15 years ago. His own life had been ruined in the process. His reputation destroyed by the same people who had come after me. Last I heard, he was working freelance, battling alcoholism and bitterness. Finding Frank took most of the day. When he opened his door, I barely recognized the man who had once won a Pulitzer Prize. His hair was unkempt, his clothes wrinkled, and his eyes held cynical exhaustion from too many battles lost. "I need your help, Frank. And this time, I think we might actually have a chance to win." He laughed bitterly. "Win? Billy. People like us don't win against people like them. We just survive if we're lucky." I set documents on his coffee table, the initial evidence Eleanor had helped me gather. "Then let's stop trying to survive and start trying to live, because if we don't stop him this time, a lot of innocent people are going to pay the price." The next 2 weeks became a blur of late nights and methodical investigation. Working with Eleanor's access and Frank's connections, we pieced together the full scope of Marcus's plan. The Green Initiative was complete facade. Omnicorp was planning a massive chemical processing plant in Louisiana, using international investment as cover for an environmental disaster. The adaptive force majeure clause would allow them to ignore regulations once construction began, dumping toxic waste into wetlands, supplying drinking water to thousands of poor communities. But knowing the truth and proving it were different things. That's when Javi Reyes entered the picture. Marcus's head of security was a former FBI agent who specialized in making problems disappear. We realized we were being watched when Frank noticed the same car outside his building, 3 days running, and we barely escaped a parking garage after being followed. We found our smoking gun in encrypted files. An email from Marcus authorizing payments for community consultation that was actually money to silence Louisiana environmental activists through bribes and threats. But just as we prepared to go public, Javi played his ace card. Eleanor was arrested on fabricated embezzlement charges. The evidence was sophisticated, creating a paper trail that destroyed her reputation overnight and revoked her access to hotel systems. Our most valuable ally was neutralized. Sitting in my apartment that night, I felt the familiar weight of defeat. This was exactly what had happened 15 years ago. But this time, I had something I hadn't possessed before. Hard-earned wisdom, from having lost everything once and finding strength to keep going. The answer came at 3 in the morning. The evidence we needed wasn't in any computer system. It was walking around in the form of James Patterson, Omnicorp's former CFO, who had been quietly terminated just before the Green Initiative was announced. Finding Patterson took 2 days. He was living in a modest suburb, clearly traumatized by whatever led to his departure. When we approached him, his first reaction was profound fear. "I can't talk to you," he said immediately. "I signed an NDA. If they find out I even met with you, they'll destroy me." I looked at this broken man and saw myself 15 years ago, scared, isolated, convinced that silence was the only way to survive. "Mr. Patterson," I said gently, "they already destroyed your career. Don't let them destroy your conscience, too. It took 3 hours, but eventually James Patterson told us everything. The Green Initiative was complete fraud, designed to funnel money into illegal waste disposal. Marcus had personally approved payments to silence anyone who might expose the truth. We had everything we needed, but less than 72 hours before the final contract signing ceremony at the Monarch with full media coverage. Marcus was planning to make his fraud official in the most public way possible. The morning of the ceremony, I stood before my bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. For 15 years, I had been shrinking, making myself smaller to avoid being noticed. But today, I was going to stand up and be seen. The ceremony filled the Monarch's grand ballroom with international investors, reporters, and dignitaries. Television cameras captured every moment as Marcus prepared to sign documents funding what he claimed was revolutionary environmental progress. Eleanor had been banned, but her knowledge of every building system remained. At exactly 2:15 p.m., as Marcus began his speech about sustainable development, every screen displayed error messages. The sound system crackled. Lights flickered ominously. In the chaos, Frank and I made our way to the front. By the time Javi realized what was happening, we were standing directly before Marcus Thorne. I didn't make accusations. I simply placed a digital recorder on the signing table and asked a question. Mr. Thorne, could you explain to your investors why Omnicorp has spent $5 million on community consultation that was actually used to silence environmental activists in Louisiana? Marcus looked genuinely shocked, then shifted to cold rage. He leaned close, his voice low but clearly audible. You're going to pay for this, you pathetic old woman, just like you paid 15 years ago, when you didn't know when to keep your mouth shut. The admission was caught by every recording device in the room. Marcus had just confessed, on camera and before dozens of witnesses, to destroying my career 15 years ago, while confirming there was indeed something to hide about his current project. Frank had been live-streaming the confrontation to every major news outlet. Within minutes, the story spread across social media, faster than Omnicorp's crisis management could contain it. The contract signing collapsed as investors demanded explanations and reporters shouted questions. Marcus couldn't answer without further self-incrimination. The next few months unfolded like vindication. Marcus was arrested on charges from fraud to witness intimidation. Omnicorp's stock collapsed as the full scope of environmental crimes became public. Javi faced federal charges for criminal conspiracy. Eleanor was cleared when investigators determined evidence against her was fabricated. She was reinstated and appointed to head the committee overseeing Omnicorp's court-ordered restructuring. Frank's coverage earned him his second Pulitzer Prize and restored his reputation. But the most significant change was what happened to me. The Whistleblower Protection Program awarded me a settlement larger than any Wall Street salary. For the first time in 15 years, I had both financial security and something more valuable. Knowledge that I had found my voice again. I could have returned to Wall Street. Several firms reached out with offers that would have restored my former life. But I discovered no interest in going backward. Instead, I used the settlement to establish the Hayes-Miller Foundation, dedicated to protecting people who risk everything to expose corporate corruption. Today, I sit in my foundation's office, no longer invisible or silent. The woman who once served water to powerful men while they planned to poison communities now has resources to fight back against exactly that corruption. I have dedicated investigators, a legal team specializing in whistleblower protection, and a network understanding that speaking truth to power requires both courage and community. This morning, a young man knocked on my door, nervous, clearly frightened, but determined to tell someone about what he had discovered at his company. As I listened, I saw myself 15 years ago, idealistic, terrified, but unable to stay silent, facing obvious wrongdoing. The difference is that this time, he won't face consequences alone. This time, there's a support system for people who choose to do the right thing, even when dangerous. This time, powerful men won't destroy someone's life simply because they dared speak up. I offered him coffee and settled in to listen with full attention that everyone deserves when brave enough to tell the truth. Outside my window, the city hummed with millions going about their lives, most unaware that their safety often depends on individuals who refuse to stay silent, witnessing wrongdoing. 15 years ago, I thought my story ended when Marcus destroyed my career. I spent more than a decade believing I had been defeated, that survival meant making myself small and invisible. But I've learned some stories don't end when we think they do. Sometimes they're waiting for us to find courage to write a different ending. The phone on my desk rings. Probably another person who has discovered something they can't ignore and needs help deciding what to do. I reach for the receiver with steady hands, no longer afraid of the power that comes with being heard. After 15 years of silence, I have found my voice again, and I intend to use it to ensure others never have to lose theirs.